Ah, fantastic. Hello, everyone. Wonderful. Okay. All right. I'm really excited about this one this afternoon because focus is something that I'm thinking about and working with all the time. So our topic today tackles what I would say is the most common complaint that I hear from clients. And so today we're going to talk about what that is and what we need to do to look at overcoming it. We all ready? So I would say that the most common problem I hear from teams and from individuals is that they're swamped. Worse than that, they're not just swamped, that we're feeling torn in different directions with conflicting priorities. So what I hear from people is that they feel as though they're not getting the most out of their day and that their organisations aren't getting the most out of them. Does this resonate with you guys? Who's ever felt both overworked and underutilised at the same time? Type yes in the chat box if that's you. Overworked and underutilised at the same time. Yes. Okay, good thing you're here then, eh? So just quickly, here's how today is going to run. I'm going to spend the next 45 minutes looking at why it's such a problem to be swamped and underutilised at the same time, and talking to you about some of the tickets out of that. So as we go through, I'm going to do more of what I did just now, and I'm going to ask you questions, and I'm going to ask for you to put your hands up, and you can respond to me by using the chat box and by using the raise hand feature. Look, this just makes the whole thing much more fun, and it means that I can check in that what I'm talking about is as useful as possible for everyone here. Everyone cool with that? Put your hand up if you're okay with that. Yeah, awesome. Okay, looks as though everything is working exactly as it should be. So I'm going to talk to you about focus and why being clear and being focused and being clear about what matters the most is so important, and how it can transform your work and boost the amount of meaningful impact you can have. Is that cool? Is that what you're here for? Put your hand up if that's what you're here for. Oh yeah, amazing. Okay, so we've got 45 minutes together, and I'm going to get through everything I can in that time. I'm going to move pretty quickly, and like most important stuff, it may not necessarily all land with you the first time. So take notes, take in what you can, but if you'd like, I'm also going to make a copy of my slides available at the end of the webinar. If that would be helpful for you, just type in yes please in the chat box. Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to get through as much as I can, and at the end of our time, I'm also going to tell you what to do to get a bit more help if you want it. Is that okay? Amazing. Okay, I'm also going to provide a few useful strategies at the end that you can use right now from today onwards to drive more focus at work right away. So I'm going to do this right at the end. And I may need you to remind me about this in our Q&A session so I don't forget. So get ready to say yes, but what can I do today at the end of our Q&A session? We cool? All right, let's get into it. So look, those of you who've been following me for a while will know that I have a few kids. I've been a mum for my whole adult life, and that also means that I have been juggling for all of my adult life. And if there's anywhere where you might feel both swamped and underutilised at the same time, I reckon parenting might be it. How many parents do we have on the webinar today? You want to raise your hand if you've got some kids at home? Yeah, cool, a few of us. Keep your hand up if you breathed a big old sigh of relief when school went back this week. Yeah, so like I've just had my 3 girls home for the holidays, and I took most of those 2 weeks off, just doing the stuff that had to be done on the work front so that I could hang out with them. And it's been an amazing time. I'm heading into this week feeling very connected to my girls in a way that's, it's sometimes quite hard to get inside the swing of everyday life with work and school and sport and everything else that comes with that. And this all sounds very harmonious and sweet, and it is. Look, but before you start to hate me for being a smug old sanctum mum, it might be worth showing you some of my photo highlights from the last couple of weeks. So, look, I have 3 girls, 13, 9 and 4. And the 4-year-old is an absolute firecracker of a human. So she's amazing, but left unoccupied, she's trouble. So here's a couple of photo highlights from the couple of weeks I've spent at home. The photo on the left, before you get terrible ideas, is the result of a hidden jar of Nutella, which Harriet, my beautiful 4-year-old, managed to find and get into. So I think it's just as important to stay focused at home as it is at work. And both of these photos are the result of me probably being a little bit less focused than I could have been with a 4-year-old in the house. So the photo on the left is the Nutella, and on the right is makeup. So my eldest daughter is 13 and likes to wear a bit of makeup, and like all little sisters, I think Harriet would quite like to be a bit more like her big sister. So you'll see that she's had a crack at doing a bit of makeup for herself. The Nutella one is particularly fun because that's actually been the gift that's kept on giving. So you'll see it's in the carpet and in the bed, as well as on her hands and face. But I've also found it on door handles. I found some in the bathroom, a little bit on my duvet. Just when I think I've got it all, I've found a little bit more. So yeah, look, it's been a good couple of weeks, I'm not going to lie. I'm not totally displeased that Kindy's back. So look, other than cleaning up after Harriet, any of you who read Wednesday Wisdom and did so this morning will have seen that there was a lot of that, a lot of eating spaghetti and reading books, but very little on the useful work and administration front. So look, I have an amazing business manager who helps me run my life. Her name's Diane, and she's on the call today. Well, I thought she was. I was about to unmute her and go to her, but I can't spot her on the call. Oh, there she is. There we go. Hi, Diane. You want to say hi?
Hi, everybody.
I was a bit of a ghost the last couple of weeks, eh?
Yes.
Didn't warn Diane I was going to go to her, so I'll let her off. I'll let her off now. But look, Diane's a lifesaver for me, and she does all the stuff that I'm not great at. So organising things, booking things, remembering to keep in touch with people. I've had her on the team for about a year, and my life has definitely improved significantly since she came in and took over all the stuff that was crowding out my focus from all the stuff I'm actually good at, like running workshops and working with teams on strategy stuff. But unfortunately, she can't do everything for me and does actually require me to give her information and answer her questions in order for her to do a good job. Isn't that a bit unfortunate? I was so focused on the kids last week that I just kind of kept blowing her off and not answering any of the questions or sending her any of the stuff that she needed from me. And in the end, she just had to resort to mutiny. So I got a text from her last Tuesday where she very sweetly and gently suggested that perhaps she should just take the rest of the week off. And the text was very nice, but between the lines, I'm pretty sure it said something like, if you're not going to give me what I need to do my job, there's no bloody point me coming to work every day. Because I was hanging out with the kids and cleaning up after Harriet and doing all that good stuff, and that's where my focus was. And if I'd been honest and focused and a good employer, I would have been way more intentional about that, I think, before the holidays started. So, look, I knew that I was going to be all about the kids this holidays, and I think maybe I should have gone a bit further than just chucking the out of office on, and had a good chat to Diane about how those 2 weeks would look before we got there. Sorry, Diane. So look, you can't do everything. And look, it's actually progress for me to be even able to say that without wanting to be sick, because I like to think I can. Any type A's on the webinar today? Put your hand up if you're a type A. You think you can do everything. Yeah, we think we can do it all, right? Look, I've been consulting and running my own business for the last probably 5 years or so now, and one of the biggest advantages to that is that when I'm not running workshops and working on site with clients, I can work from home. So what I used to think was that I could just do both in times like the school holidays, that I could kill two birds with one stone, hang with the kids and do my work, living the dream, yeah? Except actually it sucked. My work suffered, Diane suffers, and my kids didn't get the awesome present version of me. They got the distracted one, who's checking emails on my phone, ducking out to take calls, just kind of being elsewhere, which is cool now and again. But overall, it just doesn't add up to that real connection, and it means that I get Nutella in the carpet and that Bailey's makeup gets raided. So this holidays, I was busy being an awesome mum, and I dropped the ball a little bit on being an awesome boss, and other times I've gone in the other direction. So I've learned the hard way, and obviously you can tell from these pictures and from the frustration in Diane's voice before that I'm still learning that you can do absolutely anything, but you can't do everything, not all at once, and not if you want to be doing a better than average job. And absolutely not if you want to be awesome and have a real impact and make a real contribution. Because what I find and what I hear from my clients that I speak to is that there is no shortage of stuff for us to get pulled into. So we're bombarded all the time with things that we could care about and think about. Who here feels like they've got more on their plate than ever before? Raise your hand if you feel as though you've got more to do now than you ever have before. Yeah. Okay. Yep, that's most of us. And this is really common. So if I was to walk into any workplace today and ask that question, at least 2/3 of people would respond that way. And this is the paradox, I think, of progress and of leadership. So the more focused we are initially and the clearer we are about how we add value, the further we get, right? The more senior we get, the more progress we make, the further we get through life. And then so the more stuff we have to do. And paradoxically, the harder it then becomes for us to stay focused on the stuff that means the most. So over time, instead of being more fulfilled and having more impact, we actually wind up more frustrated. And that's a problem when at a team level or an organisational level, we start diluting our potential for impact. So the more priorities and the more projects that we have on our plates, the less meaningful stuff we're actually able to get done. Does that resonate with you? That the further you've come, the harder it is to actually do the meaningful stuff? Chuck yes in the chat box if that sounds like something that you've experienced. Yeah. Because there's admin, there's stakeholders, there's comms stuff, there's corporate overhead. We're responding to this, that, and the other thing that kind of pops up. And when we take all this together, this is the stuff that starts to crowd out our time. It sucks our bandwidth, and it makes it harder and harder to focus. So 2/3 of people feel like this. And most of these people will continue to feel like that because the way out is simple, but it's actually quite hard, and it's all about focus. So what does focus mean? It means clarity about why you're doing your work, about what matters the most, and about what you're going to put your attention and your resources into as a result, how you're going to make that happen. So why, what, and how. So we need to be able to focus if we want to be able to have the impact that we're meant to have. How many of you on the call today are here from the public sector? Raise your hand if you work at some level of government. Oh, cool. Heaps of you. Yeah, awesome. So I think this is particularly important for you guys because I think that when we are spending public money, and that doesn't just mean our budgets, but it also means our time because our wages are paid by the public. When we're spending public money, I think we've got more of an obligation than anyone else to use our time and use our resources in the ways that are going to add the most value, that enable us to have the most impact, because that's what we're paid to do. We're paid to have a community impact. And so having that focus is so important to make that happen. And it doesn't always feel like that. Because when you're working in the public sector and you're trying to have a public impact, there are so many potential things that we could be doing that would make good stuff happen. There are so many opportunities, so many problems, so many ways to add value that it's really easy to feel as though we should be involved with everything. But actually, if we're going to deliver the most value and we're going to optimize our time and our money, it's really important that we're able to focus on the stuff that matters the most. Now, Greg McKeown, who wrote one of my favorite books on this topic, Essentialism, he uses a framework that I really like here. And he talks about the highest point of frustration and the highest point of contribution when it comes to focus. So Greg says that essentialism isn't about how to get more things done, because I think that's where we focus a lot of our time and attention when we have these conversations. It's how do we squeeze more in? How do we get more done? But actually, Greg says it's about how to get the right things done, which doesn't mean just doing less for the sake of less either. It's about making the wisest possible investment of your time and energy in order to operate at our highest point of contribution, which I think is really lovely. So he uses a contrast frame here with two models that I think is really helpful. So in the first one, he talks about the highest point of frustration, which is sitting at the center of those three circles there. Now, at the highest point of frustration, what we're doing, or what we're trying to do, is everything. Why we're doing it is because it's popular, because everyone's doing it. And when we're doing it is now. So when we're at our highest point of frustration, we're trying to do everything. We don't necessarily have a clear purpose for that, but it's just something that we feel pressure to do. And we're trying to do it all at the same time. We're trying to do it all now. In contrast, he also talks about that operating at the highest point of contribution, which particularly for those of us in government, I think is a really lovely frame to think about the work we're doing as a contribution to the public good. When we're operating there, the what we're doing is the right thing. The why we're doing it is the right reason. So we're doing the right thing and we're doing it for the right reason. And we're also doing it at the right time. So when I run these strategy days and we have these kind of strategy conversations, one of the most common things that happens is that we try to do everything at once. So when it comes to the implementation piece and we're doing the little matrix of deadlines and milestones and when we're going to do it, it's really tempting to think that we can do everything in the first 6 months or everything in the first 12 months, because We've gone through this great process. We've figured out all the right stuff to do. We know we're doing it for the right reason. And we don't want to wait. But actually doing things at the right time and doing things in the right order is just as important as doing the right stuff. And a big part of that is making sure that we've left enough bandwidth and we have enough focus to do justice to things one at a time. So, yep, we can do anything, but we can't do everything, and we also can't do it all at once. So Greg's model is largely through the lens of an individual. So that's obviously really important. Thinking about our personal stuff, knowing what we want and how we can make our highest contribution means that we get to make better decisions about our careers, about our money, about our kids, our friends, our family, that sort of thing, which is great. But what I'm most interested in and where I love spending my time is the impact on teams of getting that clarity of focus. That's where I think the magic really, really is. And when I think about teams and focus, I think about it in terms of circles and arrows. So unfocused teams are all about circles to me. They work in silos. So they've all got their own little fiefdoms and priorities. They're all battling for their own agendas. They're closed away and they're not communicating and working together. Something I see a lot with unfocused teams. Without that clear direction to unite them, everybody's kind of doing their own thing. And not because they're bad people or they don't want to do a good job, but because they don't have that shared clarity, they've all got a different idea in their heads and a different idea when they work with their teams about what that highest point of contribution looks like. And the other way I see that circle with an unfocused team is that they kind of talk in circles too, like around and around. So when it comes to solving problems or trying to get clear about strategy, they wind up going around in circles. Who's ever worked in a circle team? Put your hand up if you've been part of a team that feels more like a circle than an arrow. Oh, boom, boom, boom. Yep. Yeah, I see this a lot. But focused teams, I think, are like little arrows. They're not circles at all. They're amazing. They're all looking to the same end point. And the path there is clear because they all agree on where the money and time and attention needs to go. So just like the circle teams, they're working as individuals and they've got their own departments or business units or people. And on a daily basis, they're making individual calls about what they need to do. But overall, they're all pointing in the same direction, like an arrow, and using their resources with the same priorities in mind. They've got that focus. I don't know how good you guys are at reading maps. I'm pretty rubbish. Google Maps has been a total life changer for me. But what I do know is that if I want to get from point A to point B, and if point B is my highest point of contribution, I'm better off with an arrow than a circle. And the arrow cuts through all the crap that's happening inside our teams and outside them and takes us on a path to where we need to go. Is that helpful? Circles and arrows? Put your hand up if that works for you, if that makes sense. Yeah, awesome. Now, we do know this. Nothing I'm saying is coming as a surprise to any of you. We know that if we're really focused, that we get more meaningful work done. And all the surveys and engagement surveys and management surveys turn up the same result every time. People are crying out for direction and clarity from their leaders to do a good job. Tell us what matters. Tell us where to focus so we can get on with it. And our leaders hear this and they read all the good evidence about how much more effective we are when we're all aligned and focused and all that good stuff. And so we try to do that. Can anyone guess what the most common approach is to trying to get that shared focus, to making that happen. Chuck your guesses in the chat box if you think you know what the most common thing that people try to do is to get that shared clarity. Ha, meetings, straight off the bat. Nice work, Paul, I like it. Yeah, absolutely, bang on, meetings. Oh, snazzy catchphrases, yeah, big fan of those. And the kind of meetings that we have to come up with snazzy catchphrases, Debs, are strategy away days. Who's been on a strategy away day in the last year? Raise your hand if you've been on one. Cool. Could you describe, just in 1 or 2 words for me, what that day was like? Just pop it in the chat box if you've got 1 or 2 words to sum up your strategy away day experience in the last year or so. Oh, argumentative. Tiring, says Debs. Oh, Paul, oh, bang on, mate. Exciting followed by frustration. Yep. Interesting. Okay. So here's my thoughts on this one. I see a lot of terrible strategy away days. I think there's a reason that the acronym for this is SAD. Actually, I also have on my bookcase, which is worth sharing. I don't know if anyone's seen those Enid Blyton parody books, but I have the famous 5 go on a strategy away day. And it is so good. And I recommend it. I'll send the link out after this. Okay, so strategy away days. What I'm going to talk about today are the 6 big and most common mistakes that I see that we make when we try and get clarity on a strategy away day, when we try and use a SAD day to get focus. And I'm going to run you through those 6 mistakes so that you don't make them and so that you're able to do things a little bit differently. Before we kick in, I'd love to hear what you think are the biggest ones. Anyone got any guesses on what the 6 biggest mistakes are? Check them in the chat box. Oh, Oliver, predetermined outcome. Yeah, I like that. That's actually not on my list of 6, but the old retrofit, man, is that common. Commit to too many things. Any other guesses? Okay, so number 1, I think, of the 6 biggest mistakes that we make when we try and get focus on a strategy away day, asking the wrong questions. We ask lots of questions on a SAD strategy away day, and we use a bunch of tools. Maybe we're doing a SWOT analysis. I don't know. There's generally a lot of post-it notes. But what I see a lot, and actually this probably links in, Oliver, to your idea about having a predetermined outcome. And I actually think that drives a lot of the questions that we choose to ask on days like this. But what I see a lot is that we try to ask the outcome question right at the beginning. So we say, what are our priorities? Or what should our objectives be this year? Raise your hand if there was a question like that at the strategy away day that you guys went to this year. Yep, straight away. So if it was that easy, we wouldn't need the bloody strategy away day, would we? We'd just answer the question. Just get on with it. Good processes, a good strategy away day, needs to ask the questions that unlock the answers to those questions. So rather than asking, what do our strategic objectives need to be this year, which is lovely and cut and dried and provokes no critical thought whatsoever, we need to be asking questions like, what's going on out here, in there? What are our problems? What changes would have the most impact for our community and our customers? For bonus points, I think we'd answer questions like, where do we have the most influence? What are we best at doing? Where are our relationships the strongest? So when we ask the right questions, we get better answers. Put your hand up if that resonates with you, that if you ask some better questions, you might get some better answers. Awesome. So that's mistake number 1. Mistake number 2, we start too narrow. So what I see a lot is that we tend to start from the basis of what we're already doing and what we already have, and then we build from there. So if anyone's ever been involved in planning for a big construction project, you know that we talk about the difference between brownfield and greenfield projects. So brownfield construction is when we work with what we already have and we change or add on from there, yeah? Maybe we're working on a site that's already had a building on it. Maybe it was an old car park and we want to turn it into a convention centre, I don't know. A greenfield project is when we start from fresh. We've got no or few constraints about what our environment looks like, and so we get to think quite broadly about what the opportunities are. And I think we need to be a lot more greenfield on a strategy away day. So rather than walking in thinking about what we're already doing, how things are done around here and building from that, we need to start way out there. And it's a bit of a paradox, really, that the way to get to narrow is to start big. But we need to do that because we're wired to hold on to what we're already doing and what we already have, and we don't even realise it. So we have this real status quo bias, which is what Daniel Kahneman calls it, where we're wired to value and hold on to what we already have. So to get narrow, we actually need to start wide. We need to throw it wide open and really explore all of our options and issues. Number 3, and this was guessed, I think that was Paul that guessed, too many priorities. So the origin of the word priority is quite interesting. It goes all the way back to the 1400s, and it's actually, it's a singular term. The Latin term priority is a singular term, and we used it like that for about 500 years. But then in the 1900s, we pluralized it. We started using the word priorities as if we could shift and bend the language, and that would help us to shift and bend reality. But look, let me be very clear on this. If you've got 5 or 10 or 20 priorities, you don't have priorities. There is nothing directive or focused or helpful about a list that big. So the magic number is between 1 and 3. There's some great research by Paul Lenwand that tells us that organisations that can stick to fewer than 3 priorities do better on pretty much every metric. They produce better financial results, they achieve more of their work program, they make a bigger impact. Their people feel better, they work better together, a whole lot. So some of the world's largest and most successful companies operate on this principle. GE, Virgin, LinkedIn, and I'm pretty sure if they can do it, we can do it too. So 1 to 3. Mistake number 4, I know this image is quite fuzzy, but I was just so keen on that chick in the middle with a big piece of cake that I couldn't help myself. We don't play favourites. So all priorities are not created equal. Like this picture, it's like kids, we've always got a favourite, right? I'm kidding. Maybe I'm not kidding. So Stephen Covey talks about putting first things first, and I'm a huge believer in that. I think that it's not enough to write the list. Even if we get down to 3, if we don't indicate which one of those 3 is the most important, we still don't know what to put first. We still don't know what to spend the most money on or where to start. If we really want to focus, we need to know what's the most important. And one of the reasons that we need to do that is because when we need to make choices between 2 of those priorities, we need to know what to put first. You know, so for me, when it comes down to it, from my example before, if my top 2 priorities are connecting with my kids and doing work that matters, which they are, and I'm faced with a situation like the school holidays where I have to choose between the 2, it's no contest because I know what comes first. My number 1 is connecting with my kids. If those priorities are created equally, I've got no guidance for my how. I don't know where to put my time or where to put my money. Fifth mistake, too boring and complicated. So tiring, I think, was Deb's word, but boring is another one I see a lot. We just don't have fun. We make it complicated. We use a whole bunch of jargon or snazzy catchphrases, and I just think it's dumb and it makes us all sleepy. So if you pulled together a bunch of overscheduled managers to get focused, assume that they are currently stressed out. And what we know about stress is that it triggers the amygdala, which is the primitive part of our brain that's all about survival. And what we also know about stress is that it shuts down the hippocampus. So in layman's terms, this is the part of our brain that does all the good thinking and connecting and decision making. And when that part's not working very well, which it isn't when we're stressed, it's really hard. It's really hard to focus. And making things boring is unhelpful. So the number one antidote for stress to loosen up our creativity and our critical thinking and our perspective is fun. So we need to hold our heavy stuff lightly. We need to laugh. And this isn't just good on the day for unlocking that side of our brain, but it's actually really important for implementation and accountability as well. Because when we have fun, that sparks positive emotions. And when we remember that time, we remember it positively. So when we're thinking about the decisions we've made in that space, we make positive associations with our priorities and our strategy, and we want to engage with it. And coming back to the arrow teams, it's amazing for teams too, because we feel closer and more connected and committed to the people that we spent that time with. And that doesn't just last on the day, but it extends. And if we're feeling connected and committed and close to the people that we've made decisions with, that triggers all of our social instincts around reciprocity and giving and commitment, which is good for accountability because it means that we're more inclined to follow through. So too boring is too complicated. And number 6, and what I think is the last and worst mistake that I see on sad strategy away days is that we don't do the trade-offs. We dance around the most challenging conversations. So we don't actually agree on the key changes that we need to make to get focused on our stuff. You know, so we might get as far as adding a bunch of new projects to our list, which is kind of ironic. But as far as talking about the how, what we'll do differently, what we'll do less of, what we're going to stop, what we're going to outsource, what we're going to delegate, it's too hard. So we either don't have the conversation or we don't get very far. Do those 6 resonate with you guys? Put your hand up if you think that you've seen at least some of those 6 in the time that you've spent on strategy away days. Oh yeah, prune the rose bush, Paul, you've got it. Yeah, so what happens at the end of these sad days is that we've left all the stuff that probably needed questioning untouched. We've had a boring shit time that we'd rather forget if we can. And we've actually ended up leaving with things on our list, not taking them away. Because focus is more than just doing the work. It actually requires real courage. It's not all the stuff we've chosen to say yes to. That stuff is easy. It's the stuff we've chosen to say no to. Not just on a single day, a sad strategy away day, but consistently and regularly in our work lives. And it's hard. And it sometimes means that we need to trade some popularity for respect in the short term. So the way that we're able to say no and the convictions that we have in our reason for saying no, remember right thing, right reason, as well as right time, and the agreement of our support of our teams and from our organisation to do that is really important. But that doesn't necessarily make for nice team lunches and easy conversations, and so we don't do it. And we just fluff around for another year until we go on another one. Okay, so I'd like to check in at this point with you all and hear how you're getting on. We've got time for 1 or 2 questions before we shift in. So if you've got a burning question, pop it in the chat box or raise your hand and I'll come to you really quickly. All right, we're a lot on questions. Tell me this one then. thinking about those 6, which of those is a key takeaway for you? Which of those 6 have you found most useful? Check that in the chat box for me. Neglecting trade-offs. Yeah, that's the biggie, right? Oh, another neglecting trade-offs. Yeah. Oh, yeah, Oliver, trying to do more within what we already have, which is like the total opposite of what we're trying to do with that clarity of focus, right? We go in trying to get more focused and we just come out with more stuff to add. Okay, so that was a lot in one go. And at the start of the webinar, I promised I'd give you everything I could in the time we had, and then I'd show you where to go to get more help. So the recording of this webinar is going to be made available at the end, which means that you can go back and watch and run through those 6 and take notes and do what you need to do. Here's the help. So my most popular program, without a doubt, which is not going to surprise you now that you've thought about some of those mistakes, is my strategic focus program. So this is a full-day workshop. It's jam-packed. It's where I bring together teams, generally between kind of 6 and 12 leadership teams, but I've done as small as about 4, and then I've done as many as about 50, which is pretty intense. And the goal of a strategic focus program is to get really clear on top priorities and agree trade-offs. Yeah, so what matters the most, what success looks like, and the key things that we need to do next to take action on that. So if you're a manager, if you're working in an organisation or leading a team and you've got too much on, you've got that feeling from earlier, swamped but underutilised, and you know that you're not getting the most value or you're not making the most progress, then strategic focus is the program that you need to be looking at. So you can absolutely run your own internal priority process to get that focus. That can be really hard to do internally. It's kind of like doing therapy on yourself. So we do often get that kind of classic sad strategy away day behaviour where, you know, best case, we do get some good direction, but worst case, we play circle teams and leave feeling kind of confused and overwhelmed and initially excited but then disappointed, I think was the terminology from the chat earlier. So look, these strategic focus sessions, they're a personal favourite of mine because we just get so much out of a short amount of time. They're an awful lot of fun. I've run these for leadership teams, for companies, for councils, for government departments, industry associations, charities, the lot. It works across the board. But they are not for everyone. I just want to be quite clear about that. So they're high energy, they're kind of exhausting, and it's a day that pushes you to think quite differently. So in general, you will make more progress in one day with strategic focus than you will in about 3 to 6 months of traditional strategic planning. And so that is hard work. It is tired. It is tiring. I had a counsellor tell me earlier in the year that we got further in one day with this stuff than they managed with a full team over 6 months of LTP workshops, which was amazing. But everybody did leave a bit sort of like, whew. So look, it's not for the faint-hearted. The quote that I've got up there is from a workshop participant with New Zealand Institute of Quantity Surveyors, who I ran a workshop with earlier in the year. So I send out a feedback survey at the end of the day, and one of the questions is, describe your day in 3 words. And the inclusion of the word brutal has got to be my favourite feedback of all time on this. So look, I know I've picked a bit on strategy away days, and it's not because I disagree with the concept. I 100% believe that strategy needs space. So the benefits of getting out of our normal workplace, out of our normal headspace, and seeing the wood for the trees is huge. It's really important, but it's really about how we do that. So having someone with no skin in the game to give you a prod, to challenge you about why things matter or what your assumptions are and get to the green field is really useful. It's the same reason that we go to personal trainers or therapists. We know what we have to do, but it doesn't mean it's easy to do it. So look, if this sounds like you, If you're struggling to get focused and you think that you need a good prod, then we should definitely have a conversation. So before we move on to our 3 takeaways for the day, I'll get you to take out your phones. And if this is what you need, send me a text. So you're texting the word focus to 2417. It's focus to 2417. Send that through and I'll be in touch in the next day or two with a super cool strategic focus starter pack. And we can have a good yarn about how we might be able to get that magic happening for you. Oh, thanks, Diane. She's popped it in the chat box for me. I think I had a slide on that originally, but it didn't make the cut. Okay, so as promised, you didn't prod me, but I've remembered anyway. 3 takeaways today that you can use to think about getting more focused. So hopefully at the end of this chat, you've got a bit of a spark. You're seeing why it's so important to be clear and be focused and to set really clear priorities. But as much as I love sharing this stuff and I really love working with people to get that clarity, I can't do it for you. I know everyone has just sent a text through that I'm seeing popping up is like, oh, what? No, unfortunately, it is up to you to do the heavy lifting and to start thinking about your focus and to start working and living in ways that line up with that. I want you guys to feel confident to think more clearly about what really matters and how you can reach your point of highest contribution, whether that's to your team, your community, your customers, or just yourself. So as a final thank you to everyone who came along today, I just want to close with a few tips and tricks to help you on your way. So number 1, try asking different questions. So we spoke about that in our first mistake of SAD strategy away days. Different questions like, where can we make a real difference? If we could only do one thing, what would that be? That's one of my favourite ones. If we could only do one, what would it be? And that really helps to trigger that figuring out which priority is the most important priority piece. Another one I really like is, what takes up most of our time? Because that provides quite a useful starting point for, first of all, does that line up with the thing that we would do if we could only do one thing? And then secondly, if we're trying to make some trade-offs and make some change, that would be the big one that we tackle. So number 1, try asking different questions. Number 2, try giving different answers. So I know that not everyone who's here on the webinar today is in charge of their schedule, work program, budget and life. In fact, most of us have a master to answer to, right? Whether that's your council, whether it's your minister, your manager. But try giving different answers. So when you're presented with yet another thing to take on or to think about, there are 2 techniques you can use to help spark that focus. One of those is about relative priority. So when somebody says, hey, I need you to look at X, you can say things like, absolutely. Is that more or less important than some of the other stuff that you've got going on? All right, so different answer. Number 1, relative priority. Number 2, you can give time and quality options. We don't do this one enough. So when you're presented with something to do, and it's not negotiable, you're going to have to do it, and you can't bump something else off the list. Do you want me to do an A, B, or C job of this? I know you've asked for this in a week. Could I have 2, or could I push out the time on other project? Yeah? So different answers, relative priority, time and quality options. And the third thing I'd recommend is to read a copy of Greg McKeown's Essentialism, which is the book that I quoted earlier in the webinar. This is one of my favourite books to gift to clients because it spells out such a great framework for why it's important to be clear on the important stuff and how to get there. Okay, so we've run a few minutes over, so I just want to say thank you so much to everyone who came along today. I can already see your texts coming through, which is amazing. Everyone who's inquired today about strategic focus, you'll get a great little starter pack through in the next day or so, and I'm going to give you a call for us to start plotting your exciting future and getting our sessions all locked in. First things first, everyone, have a wonderful afternoon and rest of your week, and I will talk to you all again soon. Thanks so much for coming.